Excuse me, everyone. Okay, we're going to start right now. It's 3:30 p.m. Welcome, everyone, to the October 16, 2015 group meeting in New York City. My name is Eduardo. I'm a group coordinator in New York City for targeted individuals. Right? I get a lot of, as a targeted individual, I get a lot of memory problems. Keep it at that. And I'm going to start off reading this. All right? And, okay, so I first want to say that I want to get myself out of this remote cage as quickly as possible, as everyone here does. By now, we have enough evidence to show the significant possibility that we are mentally ill, and that our harassment, torture, and degradation of our lives is happening to us daily. As I speak now, as it will continue to happen tomorrow, unless we resolve this matter with the equivalent confidence the federal government hasn't denied that any of this is taking place. As a community, we should not be afraid to tell someone I'm hearing voices in my head, or I'm being remotely burned. Our situation is critical. We are not mentally ill, obviously. We have enough evidence to show that technology exists, and our issue should and will be addressed if we all assemble ourselves as a strong and effective force. I'll start off describing the media agenda on the Department of Health and Human Services, HHS. Secretary Advisory Committee on Human Rights Protection, its related departments and agencies, and how they are related to the targeted individuals issue and targeted individuals activism events. Pursuant to Section 10A of the Federal Advisory Committee Act 5, United States Code Act 2, notice is hereby given that the Secretary Advisory Committee on Human Research Protection, SACHRP, will hold a meeting that will be open to the public on October 21, 2015 from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. through October 22, 2015 from 8:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. SACHRP was established to provide expert advice and recommendations to the Secretary of Health and Human Services through the Assistant Secretary of Health on issues and topics pertaining to or associated with the protection of human research subjects. Opening remarks will be from Dr. Jerry Menikoff, who is Executive Secretary of SACHRP and Office of Human Research Protection Director, OHRP, also Dr. Jeffrey Botkin, SACHRP Chair. The committee will hear reports on the secret notice of proposed rulemaking NPRM titled Federal Policy for the Protection of Human Subjects, Volume 80 of the Federal Register number 173 of September 8, 2015. The most egregious departments and agencies leading to the targeting individuals issue and pertaining to Volume 80 of the Federal Register number 173, which will be addressed at the meeting, are Department of Homeland Security, who have received accusations of violating American civil liberties and unreasonably targeting American citizens as potential threats to national security. Department of Justice, who's in Obama's presidential second term prepared a 16-page white paper called Lawfulness of a Lethal Operation directed against a U.S. citizen who is a senior operational leader of Al-Qaeda or an associated force, which implies Obama's power to target American citizens for assassination without due process in justification of national security, and in the basis of taking the word of an informed high-level official who's determined that the targeted individual poses an imminent threat against the United States. Now, as we know it, we do not have to be terrorists and or live in a foreign country to be until this day indiscriminately targeted and experimented on for the misguided premise of national security, if there is even a given reason to justify it. Lastly on this list is the Department of Defense, where in using a context of its reputation shows that in a memorandum written for the Secretary of Defense in September 20th, 1977, they were in fact studying how to control human behavior, and I quote this document. Experimentation programs conducted by the Department of Defense that had CIA sponsorship participation and that involved the administration to human subjects of drugs intended for mind control or behavior modification purposes. The memo goes on to describe Project MKUltra, and I quote, MKUltra, this was a successor project to MK Delta established in April 1953 and terminating sometime in the 1960s, probably after 1966. This program considered various means of controlling human behavior. Drugs were only one aspect of this activity, which consequently extends to MKUltra subproject 119. Were not drugs, but electromagnetic directed energy was studied as one aspect of human behavior modifications, where it describes in a memo written August 7, 1960. The purpose of this sub-project is to provide funds for a study conducted to make a critical review of the literature and scientific development related to the recording, analysis, and interpretation of bioelectric signals from the human organism and activation of human organism by remote means. If anyone understands that, that means reading your mind. That's activating the human organism. Activating the human organism is targeting a person with directed energy. Dr. Saul B. Sells, a professor of social psychology, was the director of this project under MK Ultra in 1960. So you have an idea how old this technology is, and when they began experimenting with electromagnetic energy under Project MK Ultra. Where MK Ultra's sub-project 62 describes the experimentation on chimpanzees in the National Institute of Health by a neurosurgeon named Dr. Maitland Baldwin, whose interest was on sensory deprivation. We get that a lot of as target individuals. During these experiments, he published 2 articles in Neurology Journal and another in a science conference describing sub-project 62's objective from the proceedings of 3rd Annual Tri-Service Conference on Biology, Effects of Microwave Radiating Equipments, August 25 to 27, 1959. Written by Dr. Baldwin, is titled Some Effects of Ultra-High Frequency Energy on Primate Cerebral Activity. Another title was written for the Neurology Journal in 1960, outlining effects of radio frequency energy on primate cerebral activity. Relatively, this covert experiments of 149 sub-projects focused on behavioral modification and control of the human mind were conducted by the Department of Defense and directed by the CIA while in contract, as testified by Admiral Stansfield Turner, with 88 institutions and 44 colleges, universities, as well as hospitals, prisons, and pharmaceutical companies to be used as fronts for their research. Admiral Stansfield Turner, former director of the CIA during Jimmy Carter's years in office, worked with the Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare, which was renamed what is now the Department of Human and Health Services, HHS, in an investigation to find who were the victims and if they had suffered damages from the MK Ultra experiments. The Department of Health and Human Services isn't unfamiliar with DoD, CIA projects on human research. This is in fact what they will be addressing in the SACHR meeting on October 21st. So we've come full circle back to the Secretary Advisory Committee on Human Research Protections. The reason why I'll be there will be to raise awareness of our issues, start the dialogue on the ongoing human experimentation and torture of targeted individuals. As shown at the Federal Register site, for the reasons stated in the preamble, the Department of Defense proposes to revise 32 CFR, Part 219. CFR just means Code of Federal Laws, Code of Federal Regulations. Right. As set forth at the end of the common preamble of this document, which is a revision of federal policy for the protection of human research. My question will be, if I get a chance hopefully to ask a question, if they allow me to, in 32 CFR Part 219 regarding the DoD on NPR, it starts with NPR Notice of Proposed Rulemaking. To what does this policy apply? And ends with conditions. It starts, the 32 CFR Part 219 on the DoD Notice of Proposed Rulemaking. It starts with, to what does this policy apply? And it ends with conditions. It's kind of an irony that the DoD is asking, to enforce human research protections when in the past they've conducted human experimentation. If your department handles issues and topics pertaining to or associated with the protection of human research subjects, where does HHS relate to covert human research, projects sponsored by the DoD, such as Project MK Ultra? Where would HHS oversight be involved in these forms of DoD projects? And would this policy apply to covert DoD operations? It's kind of a rhetorical question. It's a very rhetorical question, but it nevertheless gets the point across. And while it is Congress who should have the proper role for oversight on covert intelligence operations, not HHS, I will still be there to raise awareness to the federal partners involved in policy making on human research protections, primarily employees of the DoD that will be attending the meeting. That is the purpose of attending the SHCHRP meeting on October 21st, just targeting individuals, activists. There is another important upcoming event in Palm Bay, Florida, which is the annual Harris Corporation Stockholders Event on October 23, 2015 at 1 p.m. Eastern. If anyone here is familiar with the Robert Malik patent, apparatus method for remotely monitoring and altering brainwaves, filed in 1974, we would know that bioelectric signals can be read remotely by radar, while having the major advantages of no wires and with full EEG reading as opposed to mainstream science's method of using electrodes on the skull.
Can you repeat that again?
According to Malik, he discovered a way to remotely record, analyze, and interpret bioelectric signals from the human organism while uncovering a way of activating the human organism by remote means, otherwise altering brainwaves, modifying behavior using directed electromagnetic energy, as was the CIA's objective on MK Ultra. The Malik patent was developed in a defense subcontractor company called Dorn and Margolin Inc., an antenna manufacturer in radar design who was owned by a larger defense contractor, Ado Corporation, who was owned by ITT Corporation, where ITT created a byproduct subcontractor company called Excelis Inc., and which now Excelis Inc. is a subsidiary for Harris Corporation. One can imagine how this technology, which is clearly black budget science, has circulated in the military-industrial complex from one defense company to another. According to Harris Corporation, and I quote, Harris provides advanced technology-based solutions that solve government and commercial customers' mission-critical challenges. The company has approximately $8 billion in annualized revenue and more than 22,000 employees, including 9,000 engineers and scientists supporting customers in more than 125 countries. Also in August 26, 2004, and I quote, Harris Corporation, a leading provider of technical services, announced today that it has been selected by the U.S. National Reconnaissance Office for a potential 10-year, $1 billion program to provide operations, maintenance, and support services for the agency's global communications and information systems. The NRO designs, builds, and operates the nation's reconnaissance satellites, providing the Central Intelligence Agency, the Department of Defense, and other U.S. government agencies with relevant products. That's the military-industrial complex. My reason for attending the stockholders event will be to raise awareness of our issue, to make a point that this technology has existed for decades without any significant public knowledge, that there is a former CIA engineer called Dr. Robert Duncan, who's admitting to the public that this technology does in fact exist, that we're not crazy, and that it is a severely dangerous weapon against our rights, freedom, and safety as human beings. That there is a larger scheme to this than what may appear to be family, friends, neighbors, co-workers, or strangers deliberately harassing us for no given or justifiable reason. That without any real transparency or oversight, this technology has developed into a global signals, intelligence, surveillance, and weapon system, that there is no place to hide from it unless we rise up against the people who've created the system. Look for government denial from government officials like Nixon, Obama, General Keith Alexander, who's now the director of the NSA, General James R. Clapper, and you'll find that people in power lie. Simple as that. What makes our issue seem like conspiratorial fiction and even ridiculous is the confidence and audacity that the federal government has in torturing U.S. citizens and or violating their privacy, then in return denying it and continuing to do so. Easily using a historical context, as we would know, U.S. government corruption is not new. Just look for the names of whistleblowers like Herbert Yardley, W. Mark Felt, Peter Buxton, Daniel Ellsberg, Perry Felwak, Thomas Drake, William Binney, John Kiriakou, Russell Tice, Barry Trower, Robert Duncan, Samuel Province, Chelsea Manning, and Edward Snowden. And we will find this corruption is truth. Using facts in the line of this context, who's to say that this isn't really happening to us? The public has yet to realize the real danger and critical issue this technology brings to the human society, and even if we are subjected to domestic terrorism, experimentation, and or political motives, making us slaves to our adversaries, we nevertheless have a moral responsibility to make the public aware of the truth and to have this matter addressed. That's all, my point.